I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain, and I take you behind the scenes with growers who share their strategy for achieving the triple bottom line of sustainability. These interviews unravel how farmers are building their business to balance success across people, profits, and our planet. Farmer Mark Fasching lives just a few miles away from me, and he also knows that I like to check out new equipment. So one day last summer, he'd called me on a Sunday morning and said, "Hey, I think you want to come down and check this out. Bring your camera." So that's exactly what I did, and this episode is a bonus episode with something a little bit different than the typical interviews that we do. We heard from Mark and his wife Chirista of Jericho Settlers Farm back in episode 3 of the show. So if you'd like to know more about him and what they do, be sure to listen to that episode as well. So enjoy this special episode where Mark shares a little bit about what it's like farming cover crops. It's June 12th, 2022. We're at Jericho Settlers Farm, 11 a.m. And this is the farmer's share. Speed disking rye in a cover crop field. When I roll up to the field, the tractor is just flying down, and he's already about half done doing what he needs to do. Now, the first 5 minutes of this, I hop into the tractor and start talking, so the audio is a bit hard to hear, but after 5 minutes, it gets better. So hang on and keep on listening.
So this is winter rye, which my boys seeded back in the fall, probably September, and it was in rye before that. Basically just did the same thing, hit it a couple times. So this is just one pass. You see what one pass does. A second pass, gets it in a little bit better.
You said it was rye before, and you did rye again,
yeah,
just for organic matter?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really what we need to do is bare fallow this summer. So knock it down one more time and then get in here with a perfected cultivator and just, let the weeds flush, knock it back, let the weeds flush, knock it back. Kind of do that during the summer, and then either do oats or rye again. We're trying to figure out what we want to do. We don't get back onto this farm for another 2 years. So what we might end up doing is actually seeding it to a clover or pasture mix, or hay ground mix, and have someone hay it instead of me out here doing this. And then that way we're getting the legume nitrogen fixing. So that's really probably what we should be doing, because we do 4-year rotations between farms. So we're on the Richmond farm right now for 4 years, well, 2 years left out of the 4, doing cash crops. And then this farm, which we call the River Farm, we rest for 4 years. Rest.
Yeah.
So either doing cover crops, or really what we should be doing is seeding it down into a clover, alfalfa, whatever, grass mix, and let somebody hay it. And then that way we're not beating the soil up all the time. So the key thing for us is just resting these 2 big parcels that we do our cash crops on. And before we come back to them, is the goal.
Yeah.
But until we get that dialed in, we're just doing cover crops. But we were on here, well, let's see, we bought this farm back in 15, I think. So we did I think we got 5 years. 5 years. Yeah, I think we got five seasons out of this before we jumped back to our farm in Richmond. So this is really the first rest of it since we bought it. But anyway, could be a little bit of bumpy ride.
Yeah.
Really, the second pass, you have to slow down. I can go pretty fast in the first pass, but that second pass, since it creates a little bit of bumpiness.
Yep.
Like choppy waves, it'll really bounce. So I just slow down, and it mixes it pretty good anyway. If you go too fast, it's just that disc.
Then it's bouncing.
Yeah, as heavy as that disc is, because it's got weight on it, and it actually is very heavy, it still bounces.
Yeah.
So And at some point we can chat about big tractors and like this is all new to me. I'm still learning all the bells and whistles on
Yeah, this is new to you.
You know, this is so it's a power shift, which is basically 4-speed, 4 gears and 6 speeds forward, 4 gears and 6 speeds reverse, and you can preset with various buttons. You can preset based on what job you're doing, disking or hay work or what have you, and then dial that in, and just it'll go and do its thing. I mean, you still got to steer it unless you have auto steer, which we don't. But all I really do is just put my foot down. I just, if I want to go fast, I mash.
You just
mash
hammer
the pedal.
it.
If I want to go slow, I just ease up on the pedal. But there's no shifting. There's no actual.
Oh yeah,
There kind of is here. This forward, reverse.
You can. But
you can, but I just use my foot pedal, which I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's what I do it. I haven't really got into all the bells.
That's what you're used to.
Yeah. So it's pretty slick. And then a lot of things are right here. So raising the 3-point hitch, lowering the 3-point hitch, forward, reverse. I can do my remotes off the back here. It's all right there in the...
Right in one grip.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well, so you can set your speed here. Forward, reverse, raise your 3-point hitch, lower your 3-point hitch. I don't know what that one does yet, or that one. But then there's your remotes in the back. So if you've got something that you need to use remotes for, you can hold right there. This sets your draft control of your 3-point hitch. So I can do this on the fly, which is kind of slick. And then you can also do your speed here as well as
in place of your foot. Yeah.
So that's pretty slick. Anyway,
How many horse tractor is this one?
This is 150 horse.
Wow.
Yeah. Used. We bought it used out of Canada. And probably 2-3 years ago. So before used tractor prices started going through the roof, so we got time was right.
Yeah.
Timing was right. And there's some days I look at it and go, oh my God, this tractor's way too big for our, medium-sized farm. But when I get in and I use it with the implements, because we upped our size of our implements, it's like, okay, yeah, now I get it.
Feels right, yeah.
We get stuff done quicker. So it's kind of nice. All right, so we're down on the disc. And there we go. So usually doing, this disc actually works better at higher speed.
Yeah.
So high speed being anywhere from 7 to 10 miles per hour. And I usually on this field am doing about 8.5 right now. This tells you all, the screen tells you everything you're doing. So the rise anywhere from 4 to 6 feet in height, depending on, you see some areas are quite a bit taller and somewhere maybe a little bit lower, based on nutrient capability of the soils. So that's a 5-acre field I did last night, and I did that in an hour and a half. Knocked all that down in an hour and a half. Pretty nice.
I knew when you said I'm doing it now, I had to hurry.
Put the coffee down and go. Well, we got some other fields to do.
The pin was in the field. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So you can see what, obviously there's still, for me, this is not the best time to put this rye down because it's lignified. It's getting stocky. It's sending all of its energy to the seed head. And so it's really a little too coarse. It doesn't actually get in. It doesn't really. That disc doesn't really incorporate it all that great at this stage because it's like woody. The stem is too woody to really get cut and disked and covered into the ground. So probably 2-3 weeks ago would have been better, or better incorporating the material into the soil. But that being said, it still gets in. A second pass does much better. We can do a second pass and kind of see how much more dirt that throws into things and chops things up.
Yeah.
But that being said, it still does its job. So we can do a second pass on what, just so you can see what that looks like.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to probably 4 to 5 miles per hour as opposed to 7 to 9. Because otherwise it gets pretty bumpy. And again, you can adjust. I can adjust how much pressure, downward pressure is on that implement on the back with my draft control. So if it does get real bumpy and I just want to kind of lightly touch the surface, then I can adjust it right on the fly with this guy.
Yeah.
You can actually, you can see it coming up.
Yeah.
Right? So that's all right there with that dial, which is kind of slick. And there's various settings, we can go over that, but there's various settings on the disc itself to how deep the discs will cut. I think there's 8 settings on that, from if you wanted to cut, when it's fully down, if you wanted to cut it 2 inches to, I think the deepest is 5 inches. And so you can modify that. I pretty much just put it on the deepest cutting and then adjust it with the draft control. That's how I do it.
Right. So you'll go over the whole field again with this?
Well, it depends what I want to do.
Ah.
I have lots of options. So down at the Richmond farm, where I'm prepping ground for fall roots in a field that's either rye or rye vetch, I will actually flail mow it, so it cuts it up fine, and then then do a pass with the speed disc. I call this a speed disc because it's also called a speed disc because you can move at a pretty good clip. It's also called a disc plow, and I think they call it a disc plow because it really does neither of those things very well, in my opinion. It doesn't really, in a perfect world, all the screen material would get flipped and be buried under the soil where the microbes can work on it. Whereas if you look at it here, it's actually it's kind of half and half. Half of it's probably underneath the ground and under the soil, and the other half kind of sits on top, where again, it's back to timing of your cover crop. In this case, for the rye, it's really kind of too late to really get the maximum benefit out of this cover to turn it in now. But every day I wait, it gets worse. So it really should have been turned in when it's a lot greener and breaks up faster. But at the other farm, where I actually want to get a cash crop on, usually about 4 to 5 weeks before I'm actually going to direct seed, in our case roots, I will flail mow the crop, which really breaks it down, and then right immediately after I flail it, I disc it in with this, and that is a better incorporation. And then I'll let a week pass and I'll chisel plow it, and then let another week pass and hit it with a disc one more time, and that usually gets me pretty close to condition with another week following probably. And I use a perfecta to smooth things out before I fertilize and add and shape beds. So there's a lot of steps, obviously. But it does, with this big tractor and all the implements that I have available to me, then I can really do a lot of land pretty quickly, because it's just me doing the field work and cover crops. So for our farm, it's about 30 acres of cash crop and another 60 acres of cover crop. So we have about 90 acres total to play with, but we're doing, we're not doing.
I didn't know you were doing that much.
Yeah. So the beauty of a big size tractor and the various implements, bigger implements that I can use with this and other tractors. This isn't our only tractor that we have, but that allows me, just one person, to be able to do cover cropping, incorporation of cover cropping, and weekly seeding of greens, getting beds prepped, fertilized. So that's a one-person job, It would be faster if you had another person, if I had another field person to do it, but I don't. And it works fine.
You've probably got enough to do in the tractor most sunny days, huh?
Yeah. In various types of tractors, and we have a lot of different tractors, cultivating tractors, bigger field tractors for field work. So yeah, it's jumping from tractor to tractor, which is fine. It makes it enjoyable. But yeah, a lot of different aspects of those. So your big implements for doing big field work like this. So there's here on this farm, you add it all together, there's about, that field's 5, there's probably close to 50 acres here on this farm that's in cover crop, that's tillable for us to use. So right now it's all in cover crop that needs to just get incorporated, and then come back in here and either seed another cover crop behind it or bare fallow it, or a lot of different options. So you can see at the very end where I slowed down, it really doesn't do, it's just, it's almost like it just crimps it.
Yep.
Lays it flat.
Knocks it down.
Yeah, but it doesn't really incorporate it. That's because I'm slowing down. That's part, that's why they call this thing a speed disc. It actually works so much better.
Yeah.
The faster you go, obviously within limits. You're not doing 20 miles an hour, but, for me, it's anywhere from 7 to 9. I can go a little faster if I'm depending on the cover crop. Rise a little, there's a lot of material there, and if it gets stemmy, then it kind of slows you down. Or you need to slow down for it to incorporate better. But if it were a different crop, I could probably go faster. But if I can do 5 acres of cover crop, rye cover crop in an hour and a half, that's pretty good for me. So actually where you see the rye, that's actually quite a bit lower, and you look back and you see there's more dirt over that, that's because when it's smaller, it incorporates much better.
Oh, because the rye is smaller.
Yeah. So when you get into a section where maybe just nutrient-wise in that soil, it didn't really grow that rye, it incorporates much better. So back to timing of your cover crop. For me, it would have been, I'd really incorporate this a lot better if it was much younger. See all the poisonous parsnip that's coming in the last, since we've owned it. That first year that we owned this in 15, there wasn't any parsnip out here. And it just showed up along the roadsides. Because probably the roads, state roadside mowing, they probably were picking it up from somewhere.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, it's everywhere.
Huh.
That's nasty stuff.
Where'd you find this disc?
There's a dealer out of New York that sells them. It's I think it's a Czechoslovakian company, Farmet, and he's been at it. I think they came here maybe 4 years ago, and he had some demo units, and this is a 10-foot wide demo unit that he sold me about 3 years ago at the end of the season, so I got a good price on it. They do various widths. I think the narrowest 3-point hitch model they do is a 7 foot, maybe 2.5 meter. This is a 3 meter. I almost pulled the trigger on a 12-footer, 4 meter, but I didn't. And then they have various. They also have one that's not a 3-point hitch. As you go up in width, that's a towable with transport tires on it. So there's a few farms in Vermont that have them, various sizes. Justin has one that's a little bit narrow, not as wide as this one. I think Pete has a big transport one. They really excel, and again, based on where your cover crop is, it's all about timing. They really excel in getting stuff turned in pretty quickly. As you can see here, I'm It incorporates pretty well. And as you play around with each cover crop is different, but as you play around with, again, the size of your cover crop, what type of cover crop it is, and when you're incorporating it, if you have to do another pass, sometimes I'll go almost opposite the grain. So in other words, one direction lays down that cover crop, going
The other
one way, and the other one
slices the other direction.
yeah. So sometimes that works a little bit better, sometimes it doesn't. But I usually find letting it mellow a week and then disking it again does a pretty good job, and then following with a chisel plow, which brings up a little bit more soil and can bury some more of that crop.
Yep.
Let that mellow a week and then hit it with the disc again. Does a pretty good job. So yeah, we're about half speed, which is probably 4 miles an hour. This might be the speed you would do if you're pulling a transport disc. If you were trying to pull a transport disc at 8 to 10 miles an hour, something would go wrong. But what's amazing to me is just how fast you can turn down a crop like this. So you look over there and you can see that rye 4 to 5 feet high, and it turns it into that. So here we're going against the grain on one of these, right? You can kind of see it picking it up. It doesn't really, again, I'm going slow, so it doesn't really work very well at slow speeds. And the way those discs are set up, you see they're opposite each other. One set of gangs is angled maybe 30 degrees one way, and the other one's angled 30 the other way. So and they're notched discs, so they're cutting discs. One throws the soil one way and the other one throws the soil the other way. And then they have roller options, so that's the roller that the demo model came with, which is a pretty heavy duty roller, but they also have open baskets, and you can switch those out if you want to for the back roller. So that I haven't ever run that, so I have no idea what that looks like after a pass. But the nice thing about that heavy duty roller in the back is when things really get incorporated, it prepares a lovely seed bed to either do cover crop or your cash crop into. So you really almost don't need to use another implement.
Yeah,
in our case,
if you caught the crop early enough to...
Exactly. So I'm trying to keep this disc on there as long as I can until my cover crops are where I need them to be, and then I can switch out to... I've got a Perfecta cultivator, which is more like a seed bed prep implement, and that's 20 foot wide, which is great for this size tractor. And when I put that on there, I like to keep that on there. So I mean, obviously I can change a lot of different things on this. Any tractor you can switch implements out, but if you don't have to switch implements out so frequently, then it's kind of nice, and you can get a lot of work done. So what I'm going to do, usually what I do on each, I don't have to, but this is what I do. I just do a boundary on the edge, and then I'm back and forth.
Gives you a spot to slow down and turn.
Yeah,
around.
exactly. It's more of a visual cue than anything for me, because the grass is so high. Okay.
Yeah, this is tall over here.
So you see where that's been lodged down?
Yeah.
That actually will not disc up very well.
Oh yeah.
More of it's left behind because it's matted, and again back to the condition of your cover crops. The stems of this rye are starting to get so woody, it's almost like a bunch of logs being laid down, and it just goes right over. You'd think that the heavy disc would cut right through it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really do a very good job of cutting through if it's actually laying down. And to a certain extent, when you flail mow, it's kind of a similar condition, but things are finer, so it does a little bit better job of cutting through it.
In the next part of this episode, we hop out of the tractor and talk about some of the equipment. And the first thing we do, step back and admire this big tractor.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's days when I look at this tractor and go, oh my God, it's a large tractor. What are we doing with a large tractor out here?
I'm a small Vermont farmer.
Yeah, and you know, we've used smaller tractors and smaller implements for years until we got this about 2 years ago, and I think it's great. It opens up a lot of possibilities for us to farm better, farm faster, be more efficient, which is certainly key nowadays with fuel prices skyrocketing. So yeah, I love it. I almost wish we had another one this size. But over the years, we've kind of bumped up our biggest tractor horsepower was up until we got this one. We used an 85 horsepower tractor, which is a fine size tractor for the size of farm we are. But doubling that horsepower has made a big difference on getting a lot of crops, cover crops incorporated, a lot of field work done in a timely manner and much faster. And so we've slowly kind of upped our tractor size. Our next size tractor horsepower we have is 120 horse, which is a fine size tractor for the size of farm we are too. If we didn't have this big one, I think that would be a perfect size as well. But I like it because we can use bigger implements on it and wider implements, which again, your number of passes through a field, if you can make it in fewer passes and a short amount of time, that allows you to do more or take some time off, which is kind of nice to do as well. So you can kind of, I mean, this is a great example of what this does. Again, I keep going back to size of your crop. So, you know, this is almost like it's crimped. So this isn't really going to do you much. If you did another pass, then that would get incorporated a little bit better. But it lays it down like it's crimping, and then it almost, when that disc comes over it again, it doesn't really cut it up very well. It's really too...
It packs it down.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's still some green material in there, but it's starting to lignify, getting woody. And like I say, a second pass will break some of these, you know, that's the base of the roots. It'll break some of this up a little bit more, maybe bury some more of this for the soil, for the microbes to work on. But yeah, it's a timing issue. So if I'd gotten in here a couple of weeks before, when it was a little more green and less stemmy, I think one pass would do the trick. I wouldn't have to make another. And then you could either drill something right into that.
Yeah.
And you'd have better seed soil contact as opposed to this. You know, I would want to hit this one more time before I would either drill something in. In our case, I think we're gonna bare fallow it. But where it does, you know, you can see where it's buried some stuff. So you got some soil.
And if it's buried, it's gonna
Right?
break down.
Exactly. So it's going to break down much better if it's buried. So yeah, it looks rough. It is rough, but you're still returning something to the soil. And we're fortunate that we have enough acreage to be able to do this. But if we go to a pasture or hay meadow, which I think is really what we should be doing, because then you're not beating up the soil every year. You're really resting it for that four-year period, that a block of that we do that, and someone else is just cutting it for haylage or dry hay. They're not disrupting the soil. They're just taking what's growing off the top.
Right.
And if it's a leguminous mixture with clover and alfalfa and some other grasses, then you're putting all that back into your soil too. So I think ultimately that's the way to go for our 4-year rotations, is really just after that last season of cash crop before you rotate to the other farm, is you seed that down into a pasture mix or a hay meadow mix. And then I won't be out here doing as much of this, but I still do it on the cash crop.
You'll have
pieces.
somebody else out here with as many passes doing hay.
Right, but that's them doing it, so that's their time is, and the soil's still getting built up, but we're just not, so.
Are all your fields this clean of rocks?
Yeah, there's a few bony sections in here. That piece across the road is really bony, but that we rent that, and I don't even know why we hang on to it, but I have a rock picker that I can use on there.
Oh, okay.
But
nice.
that helps a little bit, but again, it's a time management issue. But yeah, no, this is all, so Winooski River back in here, it's all Hadley silt loam, which is, I think, is some of the best soil in the state. And our other farm in Richmond is the same. It's, again, along the Winooski River. It's the same soil type. I think we have maybe 12 acres that's a little sandier, but most of it's this silt loam, which is just beautiful soil. You can grow amazing crops on this. And it doesn't beat up your equipment if it's not so bony, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know, your granddad's probably got some bony ground up there.
Yeah,
is
we
it all
definitely.
bony, or?
It's not all bony.
Yeah.
But we just.
The piece on the barn side is
Piece on the barn sides.
Because you're right up against the Browns River.
It's got both, because a lot of it got washed away in 27 flood.
Yeah.
So we got a nice, good gravel pit kind of in one arc.
Yeah.
So we've got a mix. Some of it's nice and sandy like this, and some of it is like a gravel pit.
Yep. Yeah. Which is good for gravel, but maybe not too much else.
Yeah, it doesn't grow corn very well. Or hay, even.
Yeah.
You're along with me for this ride, so as the conversation weaves back and forth across several different topics, let's get back to the speed disc.
You want to look at the disc?
Yeah.
Talk about that? Oh, you can see. So we got a little bit of buildup of material again. So back to timing of your cover crop. So it's just such a big, tall cover crop that's really kind of woody. It tends to build up between your discs a little bit more than one that would be a shorter cover crop that isn't so woody. So every once in a while, I mean, we've done probably 17 acres of cover crop of 4 to 5 foot tall rye, and this is all I've got for buildup, which isn't too bad.
So you're not cleaning that out too often.
No, so this is 17 acres worth, just outside. I think it's just this one. I don't see, well, there might be one more than it's got a little bit of buildup on it, but it's not too bad. But it's not doing its job. When it's building up like this, it won't, actually the disc isn't turning because it's bunched up. So you gotta keep an eye on that. But these are all sealed bearing discs, notch discs for cutting. At some point we'll have to replace those, they're getting a little smooth. It's got weights on either side. And these are very heavy. I don't know what the weight on these things are, but they're pretty heavy. The frame itself is real heavy. So you need a big tractor like this. I don't think a 100 horse tractor could pick this up unless you had like a lift assist kit. This thing is all there and then some. On the side here, you've got numbers for setting the depth of how far this disc is going to go into the ground. And I've got it on its max setting, which is number 8. And then this top one adjusts the float of your rear. In our case, it's a roller. Some of them have baskets that adjust your height of, or depth of your rear roller or baskets. So if you look at it from this perspective, that front gang of discs that engages your soil or cover crop is angled at about 30. It's cutting, the soil's going that way. The next gang is opposite that, 30, cuts it the other way. So that's the cutting action of those discs. And again, the faster you go, the better it works. So a moniker for these types of discs are speed disc, and they really excel at higher speeds. In our case, 7 to 9. Again, depending on the cover crop, you can go a little bit faster. In this tall rye, I'm probably averaging around 8 miles per hour to incorporate that. If I were to do a second pass, I'm probably doing 5 miles per hour. It's got to go a little slower, but it does a pretty good job of breaking down that cover crop. Yeah, you can see there's some buildup around the gangs here, and when they do that, then they don't turn as well. That one's not turning at all.
Seized up.
Yeah, just because it's got so much material wrapped around it. So again, I mean, obviously every time you use this thing, you learn something. And in my case, it's, incorporate it when it's a little bit smaller, and then you're less apt to have, or you could also flail mow. So we flail mow some rye which breaks down a bit faster. And if I'm flail mowing it, then I'm obviously not getting any of this wraparound of this material around the discs. So if you get enough of your discs seized up with all that material around it, then it's not doing its job. You got to do a segment on what's in a farmer's pocket, because there's key pieces of...
A knife and a cell phone?
Well, a cell phone's a given, right? But
yeah.
For me, I don't leave the house without a certain set of tools in my pocket. And when I don't, for some reason, if I forget to bring one or all of them, then it sets me back.
So what are a few of the key tools you always have in your pocket?
Oh, I can show you. I can lay them out for you.
Oh, okay.
I mean, everyone's different, but for me...
That might be a good segment to
oh,
go
yeah.
forward here.
What's, you know, that advertisement, what's in your wallet? Well, you know, what's in your farmer pocket? So it's not one of those things where you just jump on it and go and ignore, you know, listen to your radio or
you got to look back sometimes.
Or Andy's podcast. You got to keep an eye on what your implement's doing so it can work properly. But yeah, so I mean, this, you know, obviously this for me is feedback when I'm looking at this. It's like, okay, we got to get in here much earlier so we don't have all of this stuff wrapped around your discs and they can't do their job. Yeah, that one's in there. So probably the best way to do this is every 5 acres, come out here and look at this so it doesn't really get bound up.
In between fields, take a
peek. Exactly. So all that material, so that 4 to 5 feet of stem gets wrapped in there, but that's why you carry tools with you in your pocket. In this case, it's a multi-tool.
It's time for our special segment, What's in Your Pocket?
All right, so I don't leave home without these tools. A multi-tool. This is a Leatherman, so it's got various different knives. Little hacksaw blade, which actually comes out. You can use regular hacksaw blades from the hardware store to put in here. So if you want a longer one or a different serrated edge, this comes out and you can put one in. Straight edge, a little serrated edge. There's something else in here. That's the hacksaw blade. Yeah, it's a Leatherman Surge. Pliers, cutters to cut. Those are actually interchangeable. You can take those out. And on the inside, it's got your can opener in case you're stuck somewhere with a bunch of cans of food that you can't open. That's your guy.
How often have you used
Or
that?
a beer bottle cap. I don't think I've used it. I don't know if I've used it at all. This is interchangeable, so flat and Phillips. Use this all the time. And you can buy from Leatherman a little tool belt with all sorts of different doodads you can pop in there with different screw size configurations. So I use that one a lot. And the other side is kind of like a awl if you're doing repair work. Like you can thread something in there, either if you're doing sail repair work or something, but you could use it for anything really. Flat tip screwdriver there, and a little smaller flat tip on that one. There's not a whole lot of things to that, but that's enough. That's key. That one always comes with me. And then this little flashlight, little push button. This actually this has a magnet on the end. So I can, like if I'm underneath the tractor, want to look at something, I can just pop that right on the frame, turn that light on, leave it there hands-free. I can place that anywhere on a frame of something. And then of course it works at night I use my phone light as well, but it's kind of neat. That goes in my right pocket. This is the crux piece, electrical tape. I use this for everything, taping stuff together. If you get a cut, tape your cut together. This gets used a lot. And then just a regular, this is kind of redundant maybe, but I like it. Just your regular little razor blade guy.
That's not any regular old razor blade. That's a Milwaukee Fastback.
Yeah, that's a Milwaukee Fastback. That's true. It's got a little clip on the side, so you could clip it on your, but I'm all about putting them in my pockets. So really that's not much, but that and a knife sharpener, a small little knife sharpener blade, which I don't have on me today, but like, so that blade is getting dull, so just to touch it up. And I don't leave home without these. And really, you may not need that, but that's kind of a neat handy little thing to have when you do need it in a dark spot. And like I said, it's a magnet on the end of that. Just those few tools does the trick for me. Gets me out of a jam sometimes. But yeah, there's been a couple of days where I've totally forgot to put these into my pants pockets for some reason, and I get to the farm and I'm, oh, yep, gotta get this out. Ah, it's not there.
Mark doesn't go a day without some simple tools like electrical tape and a pocket knife. But he also has made use of some pretty high-tech equipment.
Dabbling around a little bit with not auto steer, but well, I do have a auto steer thing I haven't connected yet, but Trimble makes a very basic GPS unit that actually you just kind of, it's a screen that shows you the field. You can do boundaries, you can do passes, all that stuff, and you just kind of keep it in. It's got a, what is it, green in the middle, red on each side, and so if you're off your line, it goes to the red. If you get back on your line, it goes to green. So you can, you just got to keep your eye on that if you want to do like a straight lines for whatever that purposes. But I use it for boundary too. If I want to map a field like on the fly, just drive that boundary and it maps it for me and it gives me the acreage. You can save fields, like so. If this could be a separate field, which is saved in the program. I can come here and then bring that field up and play with it from there. The next step is auto steer on some tractors, so it actually, you can set your boundary and then, whatever lines you want to run, and it'll do it.
Will it plot it out and say you'll be done in 2.5 hours?
Probably not. Probably could.
Could.
But, yeah.
What would the benefits of auto steer be for you, being you're in a 5-acre field and not a 500-acre field?
They're greater for the larger acreage, obviously. Smaller acreage, maybe not so much. It's nice to have for just a bit, not really auto steer, but just, well, it could be auto steer, but like if you've got a fertilizer hopper on the end that's spinning out a certain width of fertilizer, and you want to have a little bit of overlap and not gaps, and that's nice.
Exactly tell where you're.
You can do that stuff at night with a screen that will show you what, because it paints whatever width of, like, say if you say you can set up and save a fertilizer, whatever fertilizer, like if you've got a cone fertilizer spinner,
it's got a 40-foot span.
Right, if you know what that is and you want to have like a foot overlap, you set all those parameters up. And then it paints your line behind, it shows it on the screen. It paints your line on the screen so it knows that if it was auto steer, then it's going to have that overlap automatically. You're not going to have a gap. So in other words, if you go down a field, you might, without any of that, you might have a gap. You might do this sort of thing. So if something doesn't get fertilized, which is the end of the world, but that's a good application for it. Disking in a field, so you have a little bit of overlap. Whereas me, I'm just kind of like taking a rough guess and getting it, but like over time that all adds up.
Yeah. Whether
you're off or on, and if you're making fewer passes because you're right on the money, you're saving fuel. It's a neat little thing, just starting to play around with, and I think it has some more applications. Obviously more so on a bigger farm than a smaller farm, but I think it has some application on a smaller farm too.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it enough to think about it, but that makes a lot of sense. Like just making more things even more precise.
Yep. Yeah, and I haven't got to the point, you can get real crazy with like sub-inch on the ground. That's RTK is what it's called, real-time kinetic, I think. You set up like a base station. I mean, your satellites you're pulling GPS data from, but
it's like
some of those are uncorrected. So you can, or some of those are corrected and you can uncorrect them. I forget one or the other. But you can also set up a base station on your farm that your auto steer from your tractor connects to, and you can get like literally like.
I was wondering that because I know most GPSs are like plus or minus 4 to 10 feet. Like that's not very precise.
No, I think it's gotten down less than that. I want to say I think I can get down 6 to 8 inches with my little basic Trimble Easy. Was it Easy 250? Easy Guide 250, which I don't think they make anymore, but I think it's 6 to 8 inches. Which like if you're doing row crop stuff and you want to be precise with an automatic, like an automatic weeder or camera guided system, that's not going to work. You need sub-inch, right dialed in. I also use, we can also, in the future, we can also talk about camera systems. I have one of the, that's camera capable on that screen. I can do a camera. So I could do, what I do now is a camera on one of my other tractors. There's a camera right at the base of the forks, the frame of the forks.
Yeah.
And so with the screen inside the tractor, I can see when I'm coming down to come into a pallet or a bin, whereas usually you can't see it,
Yeah.
and you bang up your bin and all that stuff. That allows you to get, like, you can see the actual ground level as it's going in. I've used also a camera on the back of the tractor. It has enough cable that I can put it into my fertilizer hopper, so I can see when it's getting low.
Yeah.
So all those neat little applications. It's kind of cool.
I'm Andy Chamberlain, and that was The Farmer's Share. I hope you enjoyed this ride along, learning about the speed disc and visiting with Mark. If you haven't listened to episode 3, be sure to check that out to learn more about Mark, Chirista, and their farm. This podcast also has a video element from the day, so be sure to check out the show notes and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see that video and don't miss the next one. The Farmer Shares on Instagram, so please give that page a follow. You can visit thefarmershare.com to check out more episodes and interviews. If you enter your email on our website, you'll get those photos and videos right in your inbox when the next episode comes out. This podcast is supported by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association and the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. If you're loving the show, I'd love it if you could leave me a review. It's easier than you might think in Apple Podcasts. Just click on the show, scroll down to the bottom, and there gives you the option to leave a 5-star review and a comment to help encourage new listeners to tune in. Thanks for listening.